I am the commander. I am the senior man on the battlefield, and I am responsible for everything that happens. Everything. And then I went on to explain to them some new tactics, techniques, and procedures that we were going to implement to ensure that this kind of travesty never happened again. And I will tell you something, it hurt. It hurt my ego. It hurt my pride to take the blame. But I also knew that to maintain my integrity as a leader and as a man, I had to take responsibility. And in order to do that, I had to control my ego so that my ego did not control me. And you know what? I didn't get fired. In fact, my commanding officer, who had expected excuses and finger pointing, when I took responsibility, when I took ownership, he now trusted me even more. And my men, they didn't lose respect for me. Instead, they realized that I would never shirk responsibility, and I would never pass that heavy burden of command down the chain and onto them. And you know what? They had the same attitude. Unlike a team where no one takes ownership of the problems, and therefore the problems never get solved, with us, everyone took ownership of their mistakes. Everyone took ownership of the problems. And when a team takes ownership of its problems, the problems get solved. And that is true on the battlefield, it is true in business, and it is true in life. So I say, take ownership. Take extreme ownership.
Parkinson's law, what it states is that work expands so as to fill the time available for its completion. Now, in a planning for like a SEAL mission, there's always a little bit extra to do. That's why it expands beyond it by about a half an hour. You give somebody 20 minutes to plan, it's going to take them 50. You give them an hour, it's going to take an hour 30. It's interesting to pay attention to because it allows you to take some control over time, right? And knowing that if you can compress time, you can get more done. Let's say I have a call with an East Coast client that's at 7 o'clock in the morning. It takes me a half an hour, to get done, get showered. My workout, I'm going to be super efficient, and it's going to be a good freaking workout.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to waste any time. I'm in there. I'm getting it. If I have my first call's at 9, bro, my workout's going to take longer, and it's not going to be necessarily. Look, sometimes it's nice you go in there, you get a little bit of a better workout because you have more time.
Yeah.
But when you're on a timeline, you get more efficient. This also applies to if you're going on a hike or you're going on a mission and you have whatever size rucksack you have, it's going to get filled up. So the bigger rucksack you have, the more crap you're going to bring. Here's another one, your house. The bigger your house is, remember when you had an apartment back in the day and you didn't have a bunch of stuff? You had like very limited stuff. Now you got a big house, you got a lot of stuff.
With the garage too, bro.
With the garage that I've been in, which is kind of filled up with stuff.
That's real.
As well. Do your cars fit in your garage anymore?
They do now. We very recently just made the decision to go hard and clear it out, yeah.
So if you put limitations on yourself, it can actually increase your efficiency. If you set yourself up with a tight schedule, it can drive your tempo. It can drive your pace. if you give yourself unlimited time, if you give yourself unlimited resources, you're going to use all those resources. You're going to use all that time. Constraints that you put on yourself are very effective. We're Nick Lavery, who's a special forces guy. He's on the podcast. He lost his leg in Afghanistan, and he's got one of his legs as a prosthetic leg. But one of the things he talks about is that when he puts his leg, when he says, look, when you have a prosthetic leg, when you put that leg on, the timer starts, because there's sweat going to build up, the skin's starting to get worn, your body changes a little bit over time. You got to tighten that thing up. You either get swelling or you get reduction, and so all these things are going on. So when he puts his leg on, he has depending on the weather, depending on the temperature, depending on the activity, he knows when he puts that leg on, he has got to take advantage of that mobility. And if you would have asked me, if you would have said, hey, where do you think my life is right now? I would have been like, oh, okay, well, you probably expanded your business a little bit more. You probably did, this is, but it was like, no, wife wants a divorce, just total change, right? Just a drastic change in direction in his life. So as we're talking through it, and we spent like an hour talking, as we're talking through it, like at one point he's like, I might have to sell the business, because they built up this business, and he might, in order to settle with her, he might have to sell it, just like sell the business. And which to me was weird, because if you sell the business, you have no more income, so it's not like you can sell. And he goes, no, I'll probably have to sell the business, give her a big chunk of the payout, and then I'll have to work at Home Depot just to pay child support. And I don't know what I'm going to do. I just can't figure out, he's like, I'm a smart guy. I think about it, but I just can't figure out what to do. And so I'm sitting there listening. I'm thinking about it for a while. And finally I said, I'm not smart, but I know what I would do. And he was like, well, what? I said, if I was in your situation, I know what I would do. And he was like, what? And I said, I would start walking. And he was like, well, what do you mean? And I said, here, let me explain. This is what's going on with you right now. You just woke up. Like, you just came to consciousness, and you don't know where you are, and you're in the middle of the woods. And you're looking around, and you see trees, and it's like thick. You can't even tell where the sun is, right? But you know you're in the woods. Mm-hmm. You don't know where to go. And so what I would do is I would start walking. I would just pick like a direction, and I would start walking. And as I'm walking, I would eventually find a little terrain that's going downhill, and I'd follow that terrain downhill, and eventually I'd hit a stream, and the stream would actually be a tributary into a river. And then from the river, I would follow the river until I'd hit a road. And when I'd hit a road, eventually I'd follow the road to a town somewhere, and I'd figure things out, right? I'd figure out where I was, and I'd be back, and I'd be able to get food, and I'd put everything together. But I said, what you're doing, and this is what I could tell from this conversation, I said, what you're doing is you're just standing there looking around, and you're trying to figure out where the town is, where civilization is, and you're waiting, trying to guess, and looking around and looking for clues. But there's no freaking clues. You're in the middle of the woods. There's no clues. There's no clues, literally. You have to go and find it. Civilization, the town, the thing is not going to come to you. You have to start walking. So that's what I would do.